This is a special edition of WIS News Watch, brought to you by Nations Bank. The candidates for Lieutenant Governor debate.
Hello, I'm David Stanton, and welcome to this special edition of News Watch. With me now are the candidates for South Carolina Lieutenant Governor, Republican Bob Peeler and Democrat Liz Patterson. And for the next half hour, we're going to debate the issues important to all South Carolinians and hopefully help you decide for whom to vote this November 8th. A bit of background now about the candidates, and we begin with Democrat Liz Patterson. Ms. Patterson was born in Columbia and is now a Spartanburg resident. She has served on the Spartanburg County Council for 7 years in the South Carolina Senate and 3 terms in the Congress. There, Ms. Patterson served on the Veterans Affairs Committee and the House Banking Committee. Next, Republican Bob Peeler. Mr. Peeler is a native and resident of Gaffney and is vice president of Peeler's Milk, the family dairy business. He has recently completed a term as president of the South Carolina Dairy Association. Mr. Peeler also serves as chairman of the State Board of Education and is past president of the Cherokee County Chamber of Commerce. And before we begin, we're going to review the ground rules. We flipped a coin before the debate to determine the order of questioning. Ms. Patterson won, and so she will get the very first question. And we will alternate throughout the debate after that. Each candidate will have 45 seconds to answer questions in most cases, except for a rapid-fire segment and closing statements of 1.5 minutes. And we have a timer in the studio, and I will be enforcing those rules. And our first question, Ms. Patterson, this goes to you. What do you see as the single greatest challenge facing us here in South Carolina this year? Not what the voters think the most important issue is, but what issue do you think is most important?
I think the most important issue that's facing our state is dealing with crime. I'm a mom, I have a child in school, and I know about the violence in schools. We've got to do something about it. We've got to try to prevent it early on. But we've got to do something about the crime in schools and the crime in our neighborhood. And I have a tough plan that says what I think we should do along those lines. And I want to work with the members of the Senate to get that tough plan through. I have a proven record in that area talking about tough crime, capital punishment, truth in sentencing, and how we deal with violent criminals and then how we deal with the nonviolent. I think crime and how we deal with crime in our schools, in our homes, in our communities is the critical issue facing South Carolina today. It affects jobs. It affects the economy. It affects us all. Thank you.
Mr. Peeler, what do you think is the single most important issue facing us in South Carolina?
I think we have a lot of important issues, of course, crime and welfare reform and property tax relief. But the people of South Carolina are ready for new leaders and a new generation of leadership and people who are more like they are. My background is in business, and I think that that's what people are looking for.
Okay, last year property tax reform failed in the South Carolina House. Right now, plans are being made to bring it back. Do you support property tax reform, and if so, what would you change? And Mr. Peeler, you have the first crack at that.
I support property tax reform, and I have all during this campaign. As a businessman and a private citizen, I know how tough it is. It's one of the most unfair taxes we have, and I support rolling up our sleeves and getting in there and coming up in a business-like way with some solutions to the property tax dilemma that we have.
Ms. Patterson, what about property tax reform?
I don't think any of us like paying taxes, especially property tax, and there's a real concern that we need to address property tax reform. I think we have to be very careful, though, because property tax goes to education, and education is critical to South Carolina. So when we talk about property tax, we need to look at the whole taxing structure and see about tax equity. How can we look at the taxing system? How can we make it fair? But also, how can we work so that education will not be affected if we roll back property tax? I, for one, would love to pay less property tax. I know you would and all the listeners would. So I'm hoping we can address that. But we must be fair and look at the whole taxing structure as we deal with property tax.
Now we're going to take some questions from some voters here in the Midlands, some of your neighbors. And our first concerns an issue that worries many people here in South Carolina.
What are they going to do about crime in the schools? Because it is affecting education more than any other factor right now, I believe.
And Ms. Patterson, what about that? What are we going to do about crime in our schools? And if you could be specific.
I will. I would say to Mary, that's a concern for me, too. As I said, I have a child in school, and I've visited around in schools, and there's violence there. What we have to first start doing is, in the very early years, teaching children that they must abide by rules. That comes from families, so we have to involve the parents. We have to work very early on, teaching children to abide by rules. But once they get in school, they've got to abide by the school rules. If they break school rules, there has to be some punishment there. There has to be discipline. I'm a strong supporter of alternative schools. I've heard from school superintendents and from teachers that in our schools today, 80% of the kids are there to learn, 20% disrupt the others. We need to address those 20%. Keep them in school, but in alternative school programs, hopefully that'll keep them in school and keep them off the streets where they might break the law and end up in the juvenile justice system. Preventive is the best way. But once they break the law, we must let juveniles know, if you break a law, you're going to be punished just as adults are.
And Mr. Peeler, what about that question about crime in our schools, and if you would be specific?
I have 2 children in the public schools, and I think it's a shame that a child has to worry about taking an algebra test and getting mugged in junior high school on the same day. We have to get a handle on the lack of discipline in our schools. We have to send the proper signals and let our students know and our young people know that there are consequences for their actions. I support the boot camp philosophy. If we need to identify problem students early and work with them, do conflict resolution, but if we have students in schools who are just there to keep the other students from learning, then we need to identify them and get them out of school. And I support alternative schools. I think we need to expand on schools like our Will Lou Gray School, because those students need education, but also the students who are in there trying to learn need to do it in a safe environment. School should be a safe haven for children, not a place that they dread to go.
All right, our second voter question concerns welfare and jobs.
Jobs. Not enough jobs. They need more programs to help people, special AFDC recipients, because I'm one of them. And that's my main concern right now.
Peeler, what can the state do to help welfare moms and others who need the skills to get jobs?
Well, the best welfare program invented is a job. I support welfare reform. I support time limits on welfare, and I support requiring job, vocational, and education requirements. We need to work and identify the people that need help, and we need to identify the people who are abusing the system and get them out of the system.
And Ms. Patterson, what about that question about helping folks on welfare?
I think it's a very good question. It's a question that I think people can look at my record and see where I stand on that. I've always said that, workfare is what we should be addressing. People who are on welfare, most of them don't want to be there. They want to have a job. If we can train them, give them education, skills for a job, then they will find that job and they'll get off welfare. Most of them, like the lady who just spoke, said she didn't want to be there. She wanted to be working. I voted for workfare when I was in the state Senate, worked on welfare reform when I was in Congress. There must be some limits put on it, how long you can stay on welfare. People stay on it too long. We need to find those jobs. We need to get them the skills to find the jobs, and then we need to make the jobs available to them. I have worked in the past and will continue to work for welfare reform.
Okay, our next question is from a person who wants to see a smaller state government.
I think probably my question would be, do they have an interest in seeing government expand in services? And of course that means, implicitly that means additional taxes, or would they rather see a way of cutting back on the size and scope of government? And of course with that, they could hopefully lower taxes. So my interest would be the big picture. Where would they cut if they say, yes, I want to keep government small? What would they do to try to diminish the size and scope of government?
Ms. Patterson, what about that question about diminishing the size and scope of government? Do you think we need to, and if so, specifically, where should we cut?
Of course, we need to. And again, if you look at someone's record rather than their slogans or their what they will do, go back and look. I got awards from national organizations for my efforts to cut waste in spending and to hold down taxes. And I did more deficit reduction voting in the U.S. Congress than 75% of the whole Congress and more than the South Carolina delegation. So I think Ken can go back and look at my record and say, we've got to find the waste and we've got to cut it back. We can do something about that through the performance audit. We can find out through each agency how much money they're spending and how much money we could cut. And when you cut money, you cut jobs, you shrink government, and that's what I hope restructuring will help us with.
And Mr. Peeler, what about that question about shrinking state government, and if so, specifically, how would you do that?
It's a good question, and as a businessman, I know that if I ran my business like state government is run, I would be out of business. I support zero-based budgeting, and I support a performance audit. Some of the same things that make businesses successful and more efficient can make government more successful and more efficient and spend the tax dollars much wiser. And I think that that's one thing that I bring to the table that no one else does. And I'm a fresh face and a new face, no pun intended, since I'm in the milk business. But it is definitely one thing that I can bring and help the people of South Carolina because of my business background. I'm not a politician, and I'm not a career politician, and I think that's what they're looking for.
All right, and lastly, a question about the powers or lack of power the Lieutenant Governor has.
I'd like to know what they're going to do as Lieutenant Governor that's going to really bring some importance to that particular office in the eyes of South Carolinians.
And Mr. Peeler, you get the first crack at that question about what are you going to do to enhance the powers of the office of Lieutenant Governor?
It is a misunderstood office, and one thing that I want to be is kind of a gatekeeper of the Senate. Of course, the Lieutenant Governor presides over the Senate, and as a gatekeeper, I want to open the gate and let good things like crime legislation and welfare reform and property tax relief get out, and help the citizens close the gate on things like creeping tax increases and the growing state government, and general tax increases that aren't debated in separate legislation like they are by law. That's one thing that I want to do. I want to be a gatekeeper for the people of South Carolina.
And Ms. Patterson, what about that question about enhancing the powers of the office of Lieutenant Governor?
David, for one thing, what I've said is it's ruled a part-time position. It pays over $45,000 a year. I'm saying to the people of South Carolina that I will give my full time to that position, not just working when the Senate's in session, but traveling all over the state, listening to the concerns and bringing those concerns back to the Senate, hopefully to move the agenda more rapidly. I've served in the Senate, and I think it's important that the person presiding over the Senate knows the rules and regulations and can work with the legislature, work with the senators in the committee to get things done. I think it takes a full-time commitment for $46,000. The people of South Carolina deserve that. It's not a job of power. I don't like it when they say, what powers do you want? It's not a job of power. It's a job of responsibility to serve the people of South Carolina.
All right, that concludes that segment. Now we are going to give the candidates a chance to ask each other questions, and we begin with Ms. Patterson. You will have the first question for Mr. Peeler.
Thank you. Mr. Peeler, I noticed in the Spartanburg paper this morning I signed a pledge last week that I would not run for any other office while serving as Lieutenant Governor. The Spartanburg paper this morning, it says, quote, when pressed about his future in politics, first Mr. Peeler said, while I'm Lieutenant Governor, I won't run for any office. But a few minutes later, he seemed to contradict himself. In fact, Mr. Peeler said he would consider running for another office in 1998. He refused to say he would not campaign for such a post while holding the Lieutenant Governor's office. Mr. Peeler, what are you saying? It seems to be contradictory. Will you sign the pledge that you will not run for any other office while serving as Lieutenant Governor?
Obviously, Chuck Carroll is confused. The last paragraph says that I wouldn't say that I wouldn't run while I'm Lieutenant Governor. I'm not running for anything but Lieutenant Governor. I've said that all along. And while I'm Lieutenant Governor, I'm not going to spend that time running for another office.
Sign the pledge.
As far as the pledge goes, I will tell you the same thing that you told Phil Noble when he was issuing pledges to you in the primary. You need to get on with the things that matter to people of South Carolina and take your own advice in that regard. I'm not running for anything but Lieutenant Governor. My pledge is to the people of South Carolina.
All right, and Mr. Peeler, now you have a question for Ms. Patterson.
When you were in Congress, you talk about consistency a lot in the campaign. You bounced checks at the House Bank. When you were first asked about it, you said you didn't have a House Bank account. Later on, when you were pressed, you said you did have a House Bank account, but you didn't bounce any checks. Later on, when it became obvious that it was going to come to light, you had a memory, not a memory lapse, but you got some memory on it. And you said that not only had you had a House Bank account, but you bounced checks. Is that the kind of consistency that the people of South Carolina can look for in Liz Patterson?
Mr. Peeler, let's get the record straight for the people listening. There were 2 checks. I bounced 2 checks as soon as I was notified. They were very small amounts. As soon as I was notified, I reimbursed the people. The matter's ended. It's over. It's been taken care of. That matter's closed. Let's get on with important issues that face the state of South Carolina.
Okay, Ms. Patterson, now you have a question for Mr. Peeler.
Mr. Peeler, I believe you've served on the school board. And I know you know how important public schools are. You and other members, candidates running around the state talking about vouchers for private schools. Have you stopped to figure if you do vouchers for private schools, say there are 50,000 private school students in South Carolina, and we pay $3,000 in vouchers to them, that's $150 million going to private school vouchers. We still have to fund our public schools. Would you tell me, are you going to take that money from our public schools, or are you going to raise taxes?
I'm a proponent of public schools. My 2 children are in public schools. I'm a product of public schools. What I have said is that we need to pilot programs, see which works, fine-tune them, and do something about it. We need competition in our schools, and I support that. It works in business, it works in everyday life, and it'll work in our schools. I support public schools.
Where does the money
have.
come from? Where does the money come from?
The money for vouchers?
Yes.
We need to pilot it, look, fine-tune it, and see where it comes from. We have
But where does the money come from?
Same place tuition grants program would come from. We have that now.
But that's already in the budget. Vouchers are not. Where would that money come from? Out of public school or raising taxes?
It would come from the people of South Carolina, where all of that comes from.
Raising taxes?
They want more. No, you know as well as I do, Liz,
Well,
that
where
I'm
does it
against
come
raising
from, Bob?
taxes.
Tell me where it's going to come
Very
from.
much against raising taxes.
Well, where does it
Okay.
come from? Where does it come from?
That's the time on that question. Now, Mr. Peeler, you have one question for Ms. Patterson.
Congresswoman Patterson, you have said many times in the campaign that we don't need to divide, we need to work together, and I certainly have a reputation of doing that over my life. And you say that, but when you were in the state Senate, there was a resolution to hang a portrait of South Carolina's champion, Strom Thurmond, in the Senate chamber. Only 2 senators refused to co-sponsor that resolution. Liz Patterson was one of them. Can you explain to the people why on earth you would do that?
Bob, I didn't refuse. You weren't there, so you don't know. I didn't refuse. A resolution was passed, and my comment was, you know, it's interesting. My father, Olin Johnston, served longer than anybody else as governor at that time, as United States Senator, and I asked, would that resolution also include a portrait of my father? That was the way it was handled. I feel very comfortable with that. Senator Thurmond knows I fully supported, was there when the portrait was hung, but was there later when the resolution was signed. Have nothing personally against Senator Thurmond.
But you refused to co-sponsor it.
I did not refuse. I asked that it include a portrait for my father, which I think is appropriate for a man who served many years. There are many bills that I didn't co-sponsor. There are many bills.
Every single senator did it except
No,
two,
there were
and you
2 of
one
us.
too.
I was only asked one time, and I just said at that point, if you'll include something that'll also say at some point there will be a portrait for my father, I think it would be appropriate. And Senator Thurmond and I discussed it.
We're running a little bit light, so we have time for another question for each of you to the other. Ms. Patterson, if you'd like to ask Mr. Peeler another question.
I'd rather let you ask us questions. I think that's very important that you have that opportunity.
Okay. We'll have our rapid-fire questions now. That's an opportunity for the candidates to take up a wide range of questions. I will ask questions, and they will have 1 or 2 sentences to respond. And we'll begin. The round is to Ms. Patterson, and we'll ask you, do you support the video poker measure that will be on the state ballot on November 8th, allowing video poker in the counties?
I personally don't support any form of gambling, but I think it's appropriate that the people in each county have that local option. That will be decided by local folks in November, on November 8th. Each county will have that option. Whatever they decide, they will rule by.
Mr. Peeler.
I support more citizen involvement in government, and I support the county referendum on video poker. The people of South Carolina will make up their own minds, and that's the way it should be. And they will look at the different options on how many jobs it provides versus the other issues in the video poker argument. And I support the people of South Carolina voting on it.
Mr. Peeler, do you support term limits?
Yes, I do. And the people of South Carolina, I think the latest poll showed that almost 80% of the people in South Carolina support term limits. And I support term limits not only in elected officials, but appointed officials. My opponent doesn't support term limits. And it's interesting when she says she wants to get out and find out what people have on their mind. People have spoken very plainly that they want term limits. Okay. And I support term limits.
Ms. Patterson, you get to speak for yourself on term limits.
I have said if I run for lieutenant governor, if I'm elected, I'll only serve 2 terms. That limits my term. It's always interesting, though, to me when people talk about term limits, that Mr. Peeler campaigns actively for his brother for his 4th term in the state Senate, which is well over the term limits, and he supports Senator Thurmond, who all of us so well revere and thank for his service to South Carolina. So it's interesting how it's okay for some, but it's not for the other. I think we need to be fair.
Okay. Ms. Patterson, should candidates for public office send their children to public schools? That's become an issue in the race for governor.
I have always been an advocate of public schools. I think South Carolina is very fortunate that we have good public schools. I believe we must send them to public schools where at all possible. If we don't support our public schools as elected officials, who will? Those are tax dollars going to wonderful programs. We need to be in there working, talking about how to improve public education, not taking our children out, saying there's not what they should be.
Time up. Mr. Peeler?
Of course, Bill Clinton sends his child to private school. Bob Peeler sends his 2 children to public school. My daughter Caroline just started the 9th grade, and my son Robert Jr. just started public school kindergarten. I served on my local school board. I'm very much a supporter of public schools, and I'm also support a parent's right to choose what type of education their children get.
All right. Mr. Peeler, should we take the Confederate flag down from atop the State House?
I support leaving the Confederate flag up, and I support a referendum to let the people of South Carolina choose between the three issues of leaving it up, the Heritage Act to bring it down and put it in a monument, or take it down altogether, but I will vote to leave the flag up.
Ms. Patterson?
You know, that Confederate flag is very much a part of our history, a part of our history. Today is the present. We should have flying over our state capitol the American flag and the state flag. There's a beautiful place on the Capitol grounds where the Confederate flag would be appropriate for the women of the Confederacy. Put it there where our children, school children, can really see it and know the importance to our history, but not on top of the dome.
Ms. Patterson, will you be a full-time lieutenant governor?
I have said so many times, I will be a full-time lieutenant governor. I won't go home to any other job. When the Senate, you know, the Senate only meets three times a week from January to June. Those other months, I should be earning that $46,000 that the state is paying the lieutenant governor. I will travel all over this state, listening to the people and bringing their concerns back. So when we come back in session, we can move the agenda more quickly through.
Okay, Mr. Peeler?
They always say imitation is the ultimate form of flattery. I have said all along, and I've been running for lieutenant governor for a year and a half, that I will give my full-time commitment to the people of South Carolina as their lieutenant governor. I'll take state government out on the road to find out the real concerns of real people, and I won't spend that time running for some other office.
Mr. Peeler, if the state had an extra $50 million, would you spend it or recommend that it be spent on prisons or schools?
If we had an extra $50 million, I would give the taxpayers some relief. And I think we have to have a good balance between prisons and schools. And our system is backwards. We have $90 cappuccino machines in new prisons. That $90 isn't going to break the bank, but it shows how our government works against us instead of for us sometimes. And I believe that the people are ready to get government off our backs and get government to work for us, and I'm one of the people that can do that.
Ms. Patterson?
I think we all want tax relief. That's popular, you know, say cut taxes, cut taxes. But in South Carolina, our education system needs all the help it can get. The reason we have so much crime, the reason we don't have people in good jobs, the reason we are not attracting more industry is because our education system needs more. Now, just throwing money at it doesn't improve it, but I mean including programs like Tech Prep, a new program that needs help, computers in our school, more early childhood education, full-day kindergarten, excellent program. I believe in our early childhood education. So, you know, if you can't get tax relief, give it education.
Okay, Ms. Patterson, should the state continue to help finance the Citadel in its legal battle with Shannon Faulkner?
I think the courts are going to decide that for us before we're elected or before we're sworn in January. But if it's taxpayers' dollars going to an institution, it must be open to all.
Mr. Peeler?
I support the Citadel's mission and its single-gender education. I think it has a place, especially in the military institution, and I support letting it go through the courts and let the Supreme Court process work, but I support the Citadel and its mission.
Mr. Peeler, should the lieutenant governor run as a team with the governor in South Carolina, so both the members of both party or one party are elected to both offices?
No, there's some good arguments on both sides, but I've been very consistent all along in saying that I support how it's done now. I'm not for taking away the public's right to vote on any office, and I think lieutenant governor should have a statewide perspective if any office does, so I support leaving it like it is.
Ms. Patterson, what about that?
I think our system's worked very well. The people of South Carolina like the opportunity of voting on their constitutional officers. When you talk about taking any of them away, they don't like that. So I think we should leave it. I've been able to work on an administration, a Republican administration, when I was a Democrat. We had to work together. No matter which party the governor, lieutenant governor are, they've got to work as a team to do the betterment for South Carolina.
Ms. Patterson, would you favor a ban on smoking in workplaces in South Carolina?
I would really like, I never have liked to put a mandate on businesses. I would really like to leave that up to the businesses themselves. Now, if it's a public accommodation, a restaurant, I think we've been able to work that out where there's smoking and non-smoking areas. That's the best way to go, but don't put mandates on businesses, especially our small businesses.
Mr. Peeler?
I don't believe in going too far. I don't smoke myself. I have a lot of friends who do, and we have a lot of hard-working agriculture-related businesses and tobacco. And we don't need to try to balance everything on the backs of our tobacco farmers. I don't smoke, and I think we go far enough in those things like restaurants and all. Okay,
time is up for that segment, and now we are going to give each candidate a chance for a closing statement, and you'll each have a minute and a half, and we'll begin with you, Mr. Peeler.
Thank you for your time today. I've been running for a year and a half, and it's been an honor to do that with the people of South Carolina. I think that the people of South Carolina have spoken very loudly that you want a businessman and not a career politician as lieutenant governor. I think it's time that our state leaders look into the eyes and listen to the people of South Carolina, listen to their own people to find out the problems that we have. And I will take state government out on the road and find out the real concerns of real people. My experience has been in the same place yours has, in the real world, not in politics. I have to raise a young family. I'm a husband, a father, and a businessman. I want to be your lieutenant governor, and that's all I want to be. I want you to get your money's worth out of the office, and I promise you that if you'll send me there, I'll never forget who sent me there, and I'll never forget why I'm there. Thank you very much.
Hey, Ms. Patterson, time for your closing statement, and you also have a minute and a half.
Thank you, Dave. First of all, I'd like to thank you for moderating this, and I'd like to thank WIS for making this time available, and for the people who are watching it, because I know Saturday night there are other things they might like to be doing. Let me just share with you my love for South Carolina. The reason I'm running for lieutenant governor is because my family and I love our state. I was taught very early in life that if you want to make the community better, you do something about it. You just don't talk. You don't throw slogans around. You do something about it. I think my record shows that I want to make South Carolina better. You know, the lieutenant governor is an important role. Presiding over the Senate is a tough job. You have to know the legislative process. You have to know things that have happened before. I think I have a proven record along those lines. I have a proven record that I'm a strong advocate for education, early childhood all the way up to higher ed. I have a proven record how I feel about tough crime laws. I have a proven record in bringing jobs to South Carolina. I think that's what the people of South Carolina deserve as their next lieutenant governor. Not just someone who says, I want to do this, I would do this. They want someone who has shown that they care enough to spend their life helping others through programs like Head Start, Peace Corps, and through public service. I'm proud to serve South Carolina. I've been proud to work with the people of South Carolina. I hope the people of my wonderful state will give me the opportunity to work for them as not just their part-time lieutenant governor, but someone who's going to give them their full-time commitment, love, and loyalty, because I truly love South Carolina and its people. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you both very much for being with us. Liz Patterson, who is a Democrat, and Bob Peeler, who is a Republican, both running for the office of Lieutenant Governor here in South Carolina. That is our debate for now, and we'd like to thank the candidates for being here, and thank you for watching. Our next News Watch debate will feature the candidates for Attorney General, and that will air on Saturday evening, October 29th at 7:30, and then on Sunday, October 30th at 10 in the morning. Also be sure and watch our final debate, a live one-hour meeting between gubernatorial candidates David Beasley and Nick Theodore. That will air Saturday evening, November the 5th. And of course, the election is coming up 3 days later on November 8th. We will have comprehensive coverage of the election and the campaign trail until November 8th. And then that evening, of course, be sure and tune in to WIS for a complete election night results. We will be on the air until all the votes are in that evening here on WIS. Until next time, I'm David Stanton. Thanks for watching. Good night.